And then welcome to an episode of Casual Friday. I'm here at the Duck. As always, show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Specifically, check out the perp decks. You know, it's perp decks season. It's always nice to diversify your centralized exchange type trading venues, or your perp trading venues at least. So the kind gents over at Woo asked us to show some love to the perp deck side of things. If that's interesting to you, let us know, and we can do a bit of a walkthrough type of video. So be sure to check that out. As you can tell, it's super well-developed integration because Don and I are legendary, well-renowned on-chain sleuths, decks, traders, and in general, I think anything to do with decentralized technologies, Don, it's just that, you know, it's our playing field, really.
Oh, always has.
Was it your second or third PhD that you got in distributed ledger technologies? I forget.
It's actually the fifth.
Oh, the fifth. Oh, give them out like fucking candies in Germany, don't they?
Oh, no. They actually don't. Germany is hard to get PhDs.
Well, that makes your achievements even more impressive then.
Yeah, I
mean... you know, just before this show, I yeeted out a tweet saying it's like one of the most ugly BTC daily charts that I've seen in a while. Just like the candles themselves. Am I wrong? Like, what's going on here?
It's awful. And I mean, it kind of like... It's a really funny look because it starts off like really small, right? All of these bodies are really small, and then they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was like, okay, now it's gonna go. But it's just like a heartbeat, you know, like you had that heartbeat, and then now it's flatlining again. It's like fucking hell.
This is the future that range traders want, and this is why you should show them no respect whatsoever. Because
I don't even know if range traders want
no,
this.
They won't.
It's too small.
It's not enough. It's like I bought the range low and sold the range high and broke even after fees type of thing. Like,
oh, do you remember in 2018, 19 BitMEX days where that was like literally like the range was so small that if you market bought the bottom of the day and then market sold the bottom at the top of the day, you would actually lose money.
And if you paid funding, you're like half your account is gone.
yeah, and people were doing it because it was so predictable, you know, but they didn't really realize because you wouldn't see that, like the fees that you would pay, and then they would just get rinsed basically, even if they traded correctly. Good times. That's kind of how this feels. But I mean, we have altcoins moving, right?
That's
like
true.
There's a bunch of altcoins today up like 20%. Like the meme coins are up 20%. The more serious coins are like between like 5 and 10%. And then like there's ETH, which is up 1%, which is great.
It feels like a watch list DonAlt 9/11, given it's, what is it, with Trump and like PopCat. Some of the best performers.
Which have been for a while at the top of my watch list, to be fair.
There you go. Is this alt season? Is this good enough? Can we like, you know, meet halfway and call it that?
I don't know if you can call it alt season yet, but it's like a good mean reversion. It's generally, I think, like I generally think we're overdue. Like for coins like Trump, for example, I generally look at this thing and I'm like, I think this is gonna go through a market cycle. Like, so generally, even if you bearish this, which I think is the only sane way to look at it, like long term is going to zero. But I think even if you bearish this, you would kind of expect like the typical like Wall Street like cheat sheet cycle where it's like it topped, like if you're a bear, it topped when it launched, and now it's gonna put in like the complacency shoulder, and that has a little bit of room because it dumped like infinite before it kind of like goes to zero. I think that's the bearish view. And we can do that on a lot of altcoins too, right? Like the meme coins, they're down 90-95%. So even if they bounce like 2x, 3x, 4x even, they're still hilariously bearish. And I think that's kind of like if you're bearish and you're not accounting for this, I think, as in like if you're shorting all of these naked and you're just like whatever, I think that's quite a bad move, just because I think that has good likelihood of just happening. If you're a bull, you could argue like, okay, maybe this is more than just a complacency shoulder. I would not necessarily make that call yet. I'm more than happy to just be like, hey, we're putting in a little bit of a complacency shoulder on a lot of these, and that's kind of my stance right now.
So the bottom is in until the complacency shoulder top. I'm just going to roughly misinterpret what you're saying to make it the most bullish version. It's just like, I don't know if you saw earlier, Main had a tweet where he was, he was charting Aptos, being like, he said this thing is crazy, it just pumps 200% and then fully retraces, and he's drawing it when it's fully retraced. So I obviously replied saying Aptos is about to rally 200%, quote, trader Main. So like, you give me a crumb of bullishness, I will bad faith misinterpret it to make it 100 times more bullish. Feels like the only way to stay sane.
Yeah, I mean, I dig it. I like it. That's the way to go. Like, we need more of that energy and less of the whatever the fuck other energy it is that we have.
Yeah.
But it depends a little bit on Bitcoin, obviously. Like, if Bitcoin trades like a piece of shit, you're not going to have much fun. But I think the sentiment is bad enough that even if Bitcoin goes sideways, maybe you get a little bit of altcoin action. But we'll see. I'm not giga bullish. I'm not giga bearish. I just want Bitcoin to kind of like show its hand and either break out like to the upside or to the downside, and then it's much easier to kind of judge where the altcoins are at. Because if we break down on Bitcoin and altcoins initially kind of dip with it, and then catch like a strong bid, then I would actually like the argument for altcoin season would like 10x in validity. I think like if you get weak Bitcoin and then you get strong altcoins, it's kind of like the typical exit pump. That'd be quite nice. If you get Bitcoin going up, altcoins going up with it, that'd also be nice. But just right now where it's kind of going sideways, I don't want to make too grand a call, other than like I personally kind of expect a lot of things to do complacency shoulders.
I mean, you say that, and I'm watching the most catastrophic 5-minute chart I've ever seen in my entire fucking life on BTC. So maybe we should stop recording for the sake of the market.
Oh yeah, we should. Jesus Christ! Now you have to zoom in quite far to see these candles, right? Because it looks so bad on the 5-minute. Then you go to the 1 hour and you're like, okay, it's not that bad. It's a little bit bad, but it's not that bad. And you go to the 4 hour, you barely see the candle. You go to the daily, and the daily has like literally at where it's open, basically. And
it's
then
frozen.
You go on the weekly. You go on the weekly, and you're like, what the fuck am I?
Yes.
Like, what is this? And
that's
I think
high time frame analysis for you.
Yeah, but I mean, usually like volatility has been so dead the last few days that these kind of small movements that we just like, for example, the one that you just talked about, the 0.something% move that we got, that feels big.
Yes.
And yeah, that's kind of the situation.
I mean, it's the best way to get run over, right? You kind of mentally adjust and get used to a certain percentage move looking a certain way, and the market mean reverting within particular parameters, like more or less. And then when it expands, you run your cute little mean reversion strategy and then get carried out on a stretcher. Like it works 10 times, and the 11th time it's like 2 standard deviations from what it has been, and then I mean you're flattened essentially. But then if you're in Chicago selling vol, then you just pack up and open up a new quant shop next door, like in the same building, and run it back, steal some management fees. The good life.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Man's got to eat. What do you think of the weekly chart? Because this is one where there was a sort of bit of push and pull on the 97K cluster, which for a time was pretty useful and kind of dipped in and out. We're currently below it. But I mean, look, overall, if you just zoom out on the weekly, it's more or less going sideways, right? I don't think there's super useful tea leaf reading to be had there. Like, it hasn't been able to close above the highest wick or the lowest wick in this entire range. And even like the highest close, lowest close haven't been violated. So, I mean, this thing is pretty narrow. I'm guessing it'd have to be a break of one of these weekly boundaries to give some higher time frame sense of direction for this thing, because otherwise it feels like you get lost in the low time frame solipsism of the 1 minute move and then 5 minute, etc. Like weekly wise, if this were a new asset, this is the kind of the first thing I'd put on there, being like, okay, highest close, lowest close to indicate market structure, lows are holding, highs are holding, fun times, the market is balanced, they're going to go away and do something else until 2028.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just generally, like, I have the midpoint in there as like, which was the candle from the 25th of November, 2024. And we didn't hold that. So that's like one indication that maybe we get a little bit of a resolution downwards. But then just generally being bearish on the structure when you zoom out a little bit seems a little bit silly, right? Like it's literally just sideways, and you really have to squint hard to kind of make levels that are bullish or bearish here. When you kind of consider that we just had a run from 16K to 100K with barely, like without any pullback, we just had one range in between. Now we have like a little bit of another range going, and people are losing their minds. It's kind of funny situation, and it's not like we are having a lot of momentum to either side either, right? Like we had the range high test and got one bigger candle, which was basically like the Trump tariff stuff to the downside. And then like if you look at the closes this week and last week, like the volatility has decreased, so you don't really have momentum to the downside. You don't really have momentum to the upside either, but it's like just generally high time frame wise, the momentum has been to the upside. So if you zoom out a little bit, like the trend's strong and the momentum is really not there for bears. But you have like, if you zoom in very close into the weekly range, then you have like that mid range that is acting as resistance right now, where you could argue, hey, maybe we need to go to the range low or something. But yeah, I don't know. Like you said, I don't really think there's much useful tea leaf reading to be done here. If anything, I think the daily is a little bit better.
Okay. What's the daily? I mean, weren't we just cussing out the daily time frame for these most recent candles?
Yeah. I mean, the candles are awful. But if this resolves to the upside and we like go back above like 101K, for me it's 101. I think you can just play the momentum basically. I think that would be bearish invalidation. And if you're a bear, you can be bearish here and just be like, okay, my invalidation would be a close above 101. I'm not bearish. My gut feeling is that this resolves to the upside. But I also acknowledge that like as long as we're trading below 101 or below the weekly mid range, TA wise, like slightly leading bearish. I just don't necessarily think it's very conclusive, especially given how strong the uptrend has been and how weak the sell-off has been, considering that Trump's basically been throwing around like tariffs, been talking about like annexing Canada, Greenland. I mean, the Gaza, like you can literally like you can make a list, and if you threw any of these items on that list at me like 2 or 3 years ago, and you asked me like, hey, how are markets looking? I'd be like, everything is dead, you know. And then like nothing's happened. It's barely led to any sell-off, so it's hard for me to be too bearish. I think just generally makes sense to be either neutral and wait for the momentum, or be bullish, even though the TA, like I said, it's not necessarily too bullish right now on the low time frames.
I mean, it's a case of neither side wants to be wrong kind of more than usual. If you look at the weekly context, like if you're a bull and you're wrong, you're looking to the left and below you being like, there's kind of nothing here and it's terrifying if this range breaks. And then if you're a bear and you end up getting invalidated on like a proper multi-week all-time high range short, that's not a fun trip either, right?
Nope.
I mean, mathematically, I guess the bear side is scarier because, you know, limited downside, unlimited upside type of risk profile stuff. But it's like kind of a shit place to get it wrong. And I think when you run into those types of spots in the market, I think spending a long time in positions is kind of rough because you want to have a quick resolution if you're going to be doing business around the extremities. Like I think it's fine if you have a prevailing view and you're like, okay, well, you know, I know where I'm wrong and I'm just going to write it out, whatever, that's fine. But I think if you're just like in a trade already and you don't have that type of directional bias and you're kind of logging in every day and looking at those daily charts and sweating, that's kind of not a fun place to be. It's sort of what we discussed a couple of weeks ago where the argument was essentially, look, the daily time frame, I think at the time is a really clear, as much as we meme it, range. And then if you want to play the extremities, play the breakout or whatever, and you'll know very quickly whether you're right or wrong. That seems much more attractive than babysitting whatever the fuck this is on the 4 hour. Like that's I don't know how much good can come out of that. So I think you're either already confidently in positions or you're waiting for this consolidation to resolve. I think those two are reasonable views. Everything else is most likely noise trading, and there's especially no point in doing it when other markets and other stuff is just much more volatile and has much better opportunities. I don't know if that's at all useful on the BTC side. I think the weekly range is pretty straightforward, right? Highest close, lowest close, and midpoint if you want to do some early breakout trading, DonAlt style, or middle diddling. So that's like 93.5, 104.4-ish. But even that isn't a particularly radical departure from what we spoke about last week or a couple of weeks ago on the daily time frame, which was highest close just like a couple K higher, lowest close couple K lower. It's the same shit, right? Like the market just hasn't really moved, so your levels aren't going to be massively displaced either. And the weekly more or less agrees with the daily as well. So if you've got really itchy fingers, you can always use that. I don't want to overanalyze this, given it's just fucking moving sideways, isn't it? Like the market is balanced. Most times you open up a chart like this, you're like, you set alerts for the extremities and fuck off and go do something else realistically.
Yeah, I do think it's gonna break out relatively soon.
This week, is there a trigger?
I mean, this week, like on the weekend, more unlikely than not, but it could. But I mean, you're already seeing like we had a little bit of an up move during the day, and then now like it's going towards the evening Europe time, and like the market's just kind of mean reverting because it's kind of getting ready for the weekend. So I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be over the weekend, but I think next week we're going to get a resolution, at least of the daily kind of like being stuck between 99 and 94 kind of thing. Maybe we just move into the lower range between 90 and 94. Maybe we move up into the higher range between 99 and the 101. But I think next week it's very likely that we're not gonna put the same candles in that we've had in the last couple of days.
Do you get the feeling that it's been particularly noisy on the kind of headline trading side for BTC? Because the amount of arguments I've seen in both directions, essentially saying good news, but we didn't go up, we're cooked. And then bad news, we didn't go down, we're bullish. And then back and forth.
It's
while
hilarious.
The market stays at the same price. Like, thing is, I'm a big advocate for like that mode of reasoning, like seeing how the market responds to headlines and stuff. But non-responding is, being unresponsive is also a signal in itself. I think it's like a mix of shit where the economic data, like no one really cares enough about. The S&P correlation is super noisy as usual, especially on like short-term moves.
But we're getting the short end.
We always get the short end. You know this. You tweeted about it as well. That chart. We never have the fun stuff recently. And then the tariff stuff, I feel like that's news fatigue, if that makes sense. Like, the market overreacts the first time, and then it's more priced in the second time, and more priced in the third time, so on and so forth. You basically get diminishing impact on the same, more or less the same headline. So all of that put together, the fucking correlation, all sorts of news, people taking positions based on the market's lack of follow through, only for the other side not to follow through either. It's just, I don't know, man. It's like a noisy meat grinder. It feels like looking at headlines in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think just generally, like looking at what you said with the news fatigue makes a lot of sense. Like, just basically, love him or hate him, Trump just basically is constantly in the news with stuff that is big news, right? Like if someone says like, hey, we want to have Canada in the United States, like that's a big thing. But given he says so many things, these kind of like, him saying these gets less and less relevant, right? Like basically people are just like tired of it, even if it's like credible, like a credible threat or not, doesn't really matter to people at some point, and to the market either. People are just like, fuck it, can't really price this in, because I mean it's just a dude sitting in the office just deciding whether he wants to have Canada or not. And that's kind of what's been happening, and I think a lot of people are caught off by it and kind of attribute the market not doing anything as strength or weakness. I think it's basically just like everyone's just tired of headlines. No one gives a fuck anymore. But we have the same situation with the S&P too, right? Where like obviously like Trump kind of speaking about tariffs is supposed to impact the S&P more even than crypto, but that's at all-time highs. We're not. So I think the only thing that you can take from this is that we're like relatively weak compared to the traditional markets. So there is some weakness here. But other than that, I don't think like it's not nothing crazy because we're still trading in the all-time high range too. It's not like we're completely like at like 60K or something. So the weakness isn't really that pronounced. And also just like that whole news thing, I think is like people are gonna get bloody noses over and over and over again, especially since Trump basically says he's gonna do something, and then the next day he's kind of like completely forgets about it and doesn't do it. And then like this is what happened with the tariffs, right? Like every single Thursday or Friday, he talks about tariffs and talks about like how he's gonna impose like the biggest tariffs ever on whoever, and then crypto nukes over the weekend, and on Monday it's kind of forgotten again. That's kind of been the story of this whole like the last few weeks, why we've been having terrible weekends, and it's led to absolutely nothing really. So like we're in a weird situation where that whole news trading thing, I think, is just a bad way of trading.
I mean, when everything is news, nothing is news, right?
Exactly. Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, the need some stronger filters for those. I think that's more or less it for BTC. I don't want to say things that contribute to the noise essentially, and especially given that the market really hasn't gone that far, and the weekly and the daily and all those time frames more or less agree. I think we can move on really.
Yeah.
To your favorite coin or pair rather, ETH BTC.
Oh shit.
So what's the cope this week? Is it the fact that last week had a long wick? What are we leaning on this time around?
No, I mean there is no real cope. Like this obviously looks like shit. Has for a while, to be fair. Yeah, I mean ETH BTC is just not great. It did hit the monthly support. That's where it bounced from, but it's not really like a good thing, right? Like to say like, hey, this thing went to near zero and at like one of the last supports that you can actually even draw, not necessarily like something good. But yeah, like the only thing that is in ETH's favor right now is that everything else basically went down too, right? Like everyone was making fun of ETH because they were like sitting in their WIF, in their Pepe, in their whatever. And then those coins went down so much that they basically like that you would have wished to sit in ETH like just in the last couple of weeks, where it's like WIF is down like what, like 80-90% in a couple of weeks. And ETH just didn't do anything even comparable to it. But that's not necessarily the greatest cope, right? It's not what you want to see as an ETH holder. I don't really think there's much cope that you can put on the ETH BTC chart. I do have one bit of cope, and that's that when we talked about ETH BTC, I actually found that tweet because someone linked me in it.
Here we go.
Like 3 days ago, I actually like when we should talk ETH when it was trading at the range high, my target actually was that monthly level that we tagged.
Oh, okay.
But
that makes it acceptable, I guess.
but that's not really.
What
like,
is that monthly? Is it 027? Is it like all the way back to? Is it the fucking 2016 high? There's no way, right?
I just have February 2020, like that red candle that retested as support
fine.
on the December 2020. That's kind of like the monthly support that I have. But I mean, obviously not that great. It does, and we talked about this. It does start looking to look like a capitulation, right? Like it's been a bleed. We've talked about this, where you don't want to buy the bleed because that's the worst thing to do. And it's sped up in the last 2 months have been clearly been like a speed up of selling of sorts. So that's your cope. But I mean, I just don't like the ETH BTC chart.
Well, welcome home on that one.
ETH USD on the other hand, I have there's one setup that I have, and that's actually also on the monthly chart.
Oh god, no, but listen, before you gaslight all of us, we need to go back to your god tier inverted head and shoulders weekly setup. at
Oh yeah, but
2900.
I will get to that. I will
Okay.
get to
Oh,
that.
okay.
You have
You're
to
gonna
start with the high
sweeten us
time
up
frames.
first, are you? Before
Yeah. I
before
mean,
your excuses come to the forefront. Go on. What's the monthly cope?
So the monthly cope is
If you say 2.2, I swear to God, Don.
I mean, 2.2 was actually support. Actually, it worked quite nice, but it's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
It's basically you have like when you kind of map out a range here as well on the monthly. You still have like 14 days to close the monthly, right?
Yes.
So the monthly so far hasn't closed outside of the range. Like if you map out the like a very simple monthly range.
What the fuck is this very simple monthly range?
Yeah, it's a horrendous looking one, but it doesn't matter. The bottom is like 3K. The high is like 3.7, 3.8. That's kind of like the range.
God, okay.
Yeah, if you close back in that, as in if you have like 2 good weeks, right? Which is really hard for ETH to do, then this actually doesn't look that bad. Like
Obviously.
I think that's like the only way to turn this thing like to look actually quite strong and quite bullish, would just basically be like a range reclaim into kind of like just a wick down.
Okay, but that's fucking hilarious. You acknowledge that, right?
Yeah.
You're
because
like a listener of Casual Friday. Like,
no,
2.9 is a good level. You see the market trading at 2.1, and you DM Don being like, "Hey, bro, is the weekly setup still valid?" He sends you back the monthly, being like, "Hey, listen, bro, 2 weeks left. For all you know, might still be a wick."
I mean, this is why I'm just holding spot, right? Because I don't trust this thing further than I can throw it, and when you're leveraged on this shit, like you get pummeled. But yeah, so basically the monthly setup would be a
time
close
machine.
above 3K. I actually like it at that point. I might actually add leverage because I've just been holding spot. Didn't really care too much about where it goes. If it does that, like I actually like the setup enough to put leverage on this thing. If it doesn't, I'm most definitely not gonna increase any size on ETH whatsoever. And then on the weekly time frame, I mean, it retested that diagonal that we've had on the chart forever. Last week, closed at it pretty much exactly. But it's not great that it kind of lost the range. Like I would argue, just generally, when you have a range and you have you lose the range and reclaim it, you really, really don't want to go back to that. I think that's just generally like a bad sign. So this generally, even though it's at that diagonal that we've been talking about for months and months, I think this is more bearish sign than anything else. And same kind of story applies here. Like starting at 3K, you can make like a weak bullish argument, I think, on the weekly time frame. Right now, right here, obviously not great. And I mean, I'm not gonna say it's great when it's not. This needs to reclaim 3K for both the monthly and the weekly to kind of look even remotely good. I'm personally just gonna hold, and if it does reclaim 3K, I'm gonna add leverage. And if it doesn't, I'm just gonna go down with the ship, just how it goes. So that's how I'm personally.
Fine. I mean, this is like classic trade management, right? You take a weekly setup and it goes to shit, so you jump up a time frame and say, "Hey, it could be a wick," and gonna get bailed out by the monthly.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, and this, I mean, we talked about this. I've kind of been treating this as like more like an investment.
Sorry, I don't remember that in the slightest.
Yeah. So like normally I don't hold this long. Like I never hold this long. This one I'm just kind of like, fuck it. I think before the cycle ends, I think ETH goes up. If I'm wrong, I'm gonna lose a bunch of money on this trade. Other trades will bail me out, which is kind of nice, but obviously not great. So that's kind of how I look at it. I'm basically just like, I think ETH's gonna have its time in the sun. If it doesn't, oh well, so be it.
That is, by the way, like a common pillar of, because there's this omnipresent question of where are we in the cycle, right? And it leads to all sorts of speculation, like, oh, cycles are over, or we're here, or you're not early, and the 4-year cycle's dead, and dispersion, and basically like, philosophy for the most part on the feed. But one of the most commonly cited arguments for us not being at the top or being early is that, well, even ETH hasn't set a new all-time high
I
yet,
think that's retarded.
And like that's kind of scary, right? Like I think if you have like a list or something or multiple things that you look at and they're weighed according to, I don't know, their fucking importance or historical strike rate or whatever else. I think it's actually super difficult to build a system like that. You know, some sort of magical checklist where you're like tick 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 tick, and we're at the top. I'm going to sell everything, right? Like it's that's the way it's paraded on Twitter. I actually think one of the most confusing things that I see, and let me know if I'm an idiot. You can say it now. I know you're an idiot. Whatever. Is that, you know, people look at these top signals lists and they're like, oh, let's say, you know, I've got like 10 points, right? And I'm I've ticked 5 out of the 10, so we're not at the top, therefore I'm going to keep my full exposure. And that seems kind of wrong to me from a process point of view.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because like you shouldn't be treating it as a switch that like, okay, here's a fixed list of variables that need to be met that are arbitrary. I don't know how to weigh them and I've made them up. But the second they're all triggered, my exposure is going to go from 100 to 0 at the snap of my fingers. Whereas I think if you're going to try to build something of that ilk, where you have like a rolling system of checks for where are we cyclically, that has to be like a dynamic rebalancing thing, right? Like, you know, your portfolio shouldn't look the same when you're 10% there versus 40% there versus 60% there versus 80% there, and you definitely shouldn't assume that we'll get 100% of the way there, because the entire list is like kind of made up, arbitrary, and market structure has changed a bunch, and there's a ton of dispersion. There are a million other things that make it like a bit different from previous cycles in terms of like how the market is behaving and what you use as a benchmark. So like there's so much fucking commentary on where are we in the cycle and what checkbox exercises have been satisfied to be the cycle top, but there's close to no discussion as to how you actually build a framework like that and scaling out based on like increasing odds, essentially. And I think the average person reading this, it's like a nice intellect. It's like listening to a fucking podcast, right? You don't actually learn anything, but it makes you feel clever that you've sat there and listened to it, and maybe you like can quote a couple things. It feels very similar with the cycle top stuff, whereas in reality, people's portfolios, they're not fucking rebalancing them or making their own systems, or the list is arbitrary itself. The thing I want to mention is, if you're following this type of approach, you need to be dynamic with it. And by that, I mean scaling in and out based on your best assessment of the probability of us being close to a cycle top, as opposed to taking this binary view that I will keep 100% exposure as long as we're anywhere below 10 out of 10 cycle top. And then magically, because all 10 will hit at some point at the same time, that's when I flip short or fucking sell everything and sail off into the sunset. There's just like a massive confusing gap between how seriously people are taking these fucking checklists and then the real impact it has on their portfolio. You know, it's like, imagine if you got like a fucking weather warning and it's like, okay, here's the probability that, you know, your house is going to get hit by a hurricane. And you're like, you know what? As soon as the first window breaks from the storm, that's when I'll evacuate. But until then, like, the hurricane is unconfirmed, you know? Like, you wouldn't do that shit. It has to be dynamic. I don't know if that section made any sense, but I'm just scrolling through my feed and people are obsessed with the cycle top stuff. But there's, you know, very little time given to, well, how do you then rebalance your portfolio if you're going to go down that route? And that's, if anything, more important than the philosophical circle jerk about, you know, retail apps and Trump coins and whatever else.
Yeah, I generally think you either look at it from a perspective of, okay, it's very, very obvious that we're near or like very near to the top, and then I'm just gonna sell, or you go dynamic, like you said. Like pretty much every other cycle before this one, I've just been like just looking for the market to heat up that much that I can just confidently say, hey, okay, we're gonna, like, it's just not gonna go up much more for the next like 2 or 3 months, just because it's gone so crazy. And then I've just sold everything. That's kind of been my previous cycles, where I've just been like, okay, this is a clear sign that like this shit is just over. And that's worked well, but I think it's very, very risky. And that kind of game you can only play like for the early cycles that you're in, where you're trying to choose it as much as you can. Because if you miss it, and oftentimes it's really easy to miss, like especially if you're the type to kind of get like super excited about things. Like when stuff goes up, I'm like, yay, but I don't really care too much, right? But some people get really invested in it, and then it's really hard to let go. And I think if you're that type of personality, like just flipping the switch and just getting out is really hard. And like Craig just said, like basically, I mean, you're not always going to get the same signals. It's more kind of individualistic how you interpret the signs that you're given. But yeah, I've done basically like just dumped everything the moment I was like, okay, this shit's just like, this is cooked. In prior cycles, and in this cycle, I've just kind of been like, I'm not sure if I can do that again, because this cycle I'm just not as much on the computer trading this thing as I used to be in prior cycles. So I'm just taking profit along the way. And I 100% agree with you that top cycles are not going to always be the same. Anyone that's kind of looked for the same top signs from 2017 to 2020 to whatever, it's just not the same. It's a similar kind of feeling that you get if you're in tune with it, but it's not like this. Like if you're like, oh, this and this influencer has to be like super bullish or whatever, like it's just stupid. Or like I have to be called by my mom and then by my grandpa and then by my grandma in that order to be able to sell, because that was the top last time. It's like, obviously that's not gonna work, you know. So you got to be a little bit realistic with these things. But I think you can do both. It just depends on your personality.
Yes. I mean, the best one is I haven't made enough money yet, so it's not the cycle top.
I think that's literally like
That's
what most
such
people
a good
are
one,
at right
though,
now,
dude.
because
So
like the altcoins went down so much. I think like I streamed yesterday morning actually, and like I was talking with people and was like asking like how wrecked they were, and like someone came in and was like, hey, I have less money than I had at the bear market bottom, like at 16k Bitcoin.
Jesus
and
Christ.
I was like, holy shit. And he's not the only one. There's so many that got completely rinsed this cycle.
Yeah.
And they're either super bearish because they're just like, okay, this market just deserves zero for just fucking me that badly. Like I just want to see this market die. Or they're like, this cycle cannot be over because they have found some money somewhere where they can like now have like super risky bets, and they're like, the cycle cannot be. And I think that's kind of like, it's a crazy like sentiment that we have right now, where it's either like a bunch of people that lost a shitload of money that are super bearish, and then you have the ones that still have hope that are super bullish because they haven't made enough money. Then you have a bunch of people that made a shitload of money that are just kind of like, okay, whatever, if it's the cycle top or the cycle or like in the middle of it, who cares, like I already made so much money. And like the levels of wrecked are just so different. It's very rare that we get that. Like usually it's
this
like
is the first time this
Yeah.
extreme amount of dispersion for sure.
Like usually it's like people are winning and then people are losing. And this time it's like some people are winning really hard, and a lot of people are losing really badly. And it's not how it usually goes.
Yeah, dude, it used to be the case that, you know, in the middle of a bull market, it's like, oh, so what do? You know, you talk to anyone about crypto, you hear about crypto when everything's going up. Like the average person would kind of, or at least someone like adjacent to finance or whatever, would assume that, oh, well, you know, I'm seeing crypto in the headlines. This person says they're a crypto person, so they must be doing well, right? Because like everything's so fucking correlated and going up at the same time. Whereas now it's like, oh, well, BTC is at like 100k or whatever. You must be doing really well. It's like, I'm down 80%, you know? Like,
Yep.
That kind of dispersion makes it brutal. I also think it kind of serves to support the argument that looking for, like, look, I agree with you in the past, as much as I think it's in general a risky idea to do the whole 0 to 100 thing. I've done that before. That's kind of all I've done, similar to you up to this point, of like, okay, that's enough, fuck it, I'm gonna sell. But I think what makes it easier is that at least for me, I've always been extremely like BTC and majors oriented. So that makes it easier. And I don't have the risk of having like a bunch of super illiquid positions and a bunch of concurrent positions and other things to manage at the same time. Especially towards the end, it gets pretty concentrated in majors and liquid stuff. And I think that just makes that easier because you have to focus on one or two things in order to make that type of decision. And then also, when we used to do it in previous cycles, like using BTC as that kind of benchmark, it actually made sense because from a market structure point of view, if BTC was cooked, like everything else was mega cooked, and they would trade much more in lockstep than they do now. Whereas the degree of dispersion now is so fucking mental that, you know, you get like a bearish signal on BTC or whatever, you sell it, and then the altcoin you were holding can 2x, for example, right? Because of some fucking async news or whatever, and then you feel like an idiot. So The final consideration that I think makes sense is if you're going to take that approach of I'm going to keep all my exposure and then nuke it all at once, I think you inherently have to come to be comfortable with the fact that you could miss out on a shit ton, right? If you're fine with that, then it's a completely fine approach because it's more of a capital preservation favoring tactic, being like, I just want to keep, like, I'm optimizing towards keeping as much of what I've made as possible, even if it means I miss out on more upside. That's kind of the implicit trade-off when you take that approach to it. Whereas I think if you're going to be more active, rebalancing, holding on for as long as you can, essentially, that's it's a much more aggressive strategy. And I think the mindset there isn't capital preservation. It's more the stuff we've spoken about in previous instances, where it's like, listen, the final X weeks are the most volatile and where all the money is made and lost, and like I want to be a part of that because the opportunity is too big for me to pass up. And I think both of those are fine as long as you know the game you're playing. This is kind of what we keep coming back to in these conversations. Like, there are many ways to skin a cat, as the expression goes, as long as you know the implicit trade-offs. If you're going to be a boring fucking old boomer, you'll keep more money, but you'll make less and you might miss out more on the tail end. If you're going to do the YOLO, I'm here for the final fucking spin on the roller coaster, then you might make more if you're lucky, but then your risk profile is like completely different if you get it wrong. So I think it's just important to know which bucket to put yourself in and make those choices accordingly. Like, from experience, and I've written about this and we've spoken about this, and presumably you've seen similar, like, most people, intentionally or not, fall into two buckets, which is make less, keep more, make more, keep less. And I think both of them are justifiable depending on personal circumstances, whatever experience, risk appetite, all that shit. You just don't want to be in like the middle bucket, where you're taking like a lot more risk for shittier returns and just like a completely dog shit EV, like the worst of both worlds. I think that kind of life level diddle in the middle is the one you want to avoid when it comes to portfolio construction shit. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, the sad part is I think most people were kind of like in the Bitcoin, ETH, Solana kind of camp, and then the meme coin cycle happened, and I think people basically missed out on like 90% of the meme cycle because they were like, this is fucking stupid. Because anyone reasonably looking at memes is gonna come to the conclusion that it's just a fucking stupid game, right? But then they went so crazy that I think a lot of people went basically from like sitting in like the boomer assets to jumping in the tail end of the meme cycle, and then they're down 90%. And I think that's kind of like where a lot of people went wrong this cycle, which is just it kind of feels like crypto always does this. It goes so far until it has like baited the most iron-willed skeptic into buying the stupid meme at the end of the day, and then it rucks everyone completely. And I think that's kind of what happened this cycle, which is kind of sad. Like,
I mean, I think you're a washed-up scammer who says that alt memes are bad and you trade XRP memes, and you're a bad person, and I'm just going to make stuff up about you on Twitter.
I mean, join the long list of people that make up shit about me on Twitter.
Oh, man. But the thing is, there is a saving grace for all this, Don, not to sound too boomerish. Like, I think something that we can all unite around that will make us happy is that about an hour ago, Pump Fund launched a mobile app.
Did they actually?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because we need more of that. Fucking hell.
So, none of what we said matters. We can all make it with the Pump Fund mobile app now.
Yeah.
I've already reached out to them for sponsorship, by the way.
Good.
Oh God, how funny would that be? We just do fucking shitters on stream. It's like the Brussels...
I mean, that's what everyone does.
I know, the Brussels vape cabal or something. The Brexit vape cabal, I don't know. Let me cook.
Yeah, I mean, that's what everyone does now. It's kind of crazy how insane. We used to celebrate like the traders and everyone.
Oh,
like everyone kind of making money with their skills, and now it's like we're celebrating people for the way that they can shit.
I mean, it's just like the whole Twitch live stream fails, type of TikTok-ification of trading.
How can anyone watch this shit? I don't understand.
Mate, it's so bad. It's so bad. Did you see one of the guys was talking about like how, I mean, Hyperliquid is cool objectively, but he was talking about, he was hyping it up by saying they've got like a limit orders or something, and he'd never seen that type of order type before. And he's like, they really care about their traders and stuff. It's like, holy shit. I mean, I was here when, and as were you, do you remember when Binance added stop losses? That sentence probably sounds insane to people listening, but there was a time when Binance just like didn't have stop losses, and then they added them, and people fucking loved it. But it seemed like that kind of moment where you kind of, do you know that meme of, I think it's Inglorious Bastards, where the guy holds up either 3 or 4 fingers, and like the way he's holding them up betrays the fact that he's not. Like, he is a part of the resistance or whatever. I forget the plot. I feel like we have a lot of those moments with like the trench guys when they talk about like either trading or centralized exchange order types or open interest or whatever. And it's like they have massive audiences who like follow their calls and market analysis. It's like, oh, you have like no fucking idea what's going on, do you? It's pretty impressive. I don't know about that meta. I just think that the Brexit vape cabal has to come and claw back some market share at this point on, because fucking hell.
Yeah, someone has to out cabal that cabal.
Well, the thing is, I think it's like we were pretty early to the trend of mentioning how the trenches had become like just professional extraction farms, right? Like it went from organic fun, hey, this is cool, let's look at the virality, look at the community, VC coins suck. And now it's like an increasingly small group. Like the thing is, the cabal used to be like half conspiratorial, if that makes sense. Where it's like, yeah, okay, it's slowly becoming more industrialized and professional and serial, and there are groups of token launchers and insiders that they go towards. And, you know, back when the wallet tracking software wasn't as good, like it was kind of half cabal. It was like deep state light, if you will, where there's some truth to it, but really it's just like a big administrative state and really ossified lawmaking processes, etc. But now it feels like there is actually a fucking
there is 100%.
Like, there is like that infrastructure really exists, and it's really sophisticated, and it just explicitly rapes retail and takes money from crypto and into Lambo dealerships. Like it's as professional as ever.
And it's not only the vape cabal that does it. Like there's people like in the shadows that do this.
Oh my god! Yeah, people you've never heard of, like, and probably never will hear about.
No, you will never hear about them. They literally are professionals in ripping people off on pump fun, ripping people off in memes. I mean, there's people that have launched like 10,000, 100,000 coins, and it's just on one account where you're just like, I mean, okay, where like, and then they make you track their wallets, and they make a shitload of money, right? And you know that these people that kind of like extract that much money, they're not people that reinvest it. There's not like, and I mean, at the end of the day, it kind of makes sense, right? It's the same for like, I mean, for us to an extent, right? Where we started trading, and then like we've been in the ecosystem for a long time. It's kind of like all we've been doing, right? And then you have to pay the bills, you have to do a bunch of shit. So I mean, we're extracting money by trading, right? But they're doing it by kind of like just scamming people. And you know, like that money just, like a lot of that just doesn't come back in, which is like just another added kind of negative. I think like it's just a big liquidity drain on the entire ecosystem. And the more of these kind of like scammers you have, the worse it gets. And I think that's kind of what's bled the meme coin space so dry. And it's why they just suddenly went down like 80-90%, is because there was just no more money to go around. Like people just lost everything they had. Like, and it's not because if it was zero sum, right? I think the meme coin game is at the biggest popularity it's ever had, right? Like it's not like this is something like NFTs that just died out and no one does it anymore. It's like, I think if anything, like it's as popular and as mainstream as it's ever been. But it's been drained so much that all of that new money that comes in just immediately goes to like either a scammer, like these like professional scammers just sit there and like make 1 million coins, or it goes to like a grifter, like the cabals, like the public cabals that we know of, right? Or like in a rare case, it goes to like a trader that actually does make money, right? And I think that's the exception now, not like like you have a little bit of scamming, like 5% of the profits go to the scammers. No, I literally think,
like,
and I mean, I could be wrong on this, it's like 80% or 90% of the profits go to scammers. Like I legit
I think that's pretty evidence-based.
And I think like 80% is low. I think
80 is
like
low.
more.
I mean, have you seen
of
those
that.
stats on? I mean, I know it wasn't super empirically rigorous. I read some critiques, but just in general, even if you take the stats at face value or gut feel it, like how many people have been profitable on Pump Fun, there's the numbers are miserable, right?
Yeah.
You just see like these fake P&L screenshots or screenshots from insiders or one new launch that's hot, again, usually laden by insiders. And that alone is enough to kind of reinvigorate the animal spirits, as discussed previously. And people are like, oh, look, I've been burned on the last fucking 50 coins because they've been like bundled insider scams. But if only
But
I
this is
caught
it.
this one. Yeah. So it is still possible. And they get back into the
Yeah.
trenches and get fucking rinsed another 50 times. Like, I think it is definitely doable. I think it's just becoming harder and harder. Like, even
Yeah,
following a few people who are pretty agnostic but active in the trenches, periodically, and I think the trend has been this way, they're like, look, apart from the one odd organic runner, everything else is like a bundled, scammy, cabali piece of shit, and it's not particularly fun at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if 80% of the money goes to scammers, you have to have a huge edge, right? Like,
Oh my god, yeah.
imagine you were trading on a centralized exchange and your fees were like 50% of your proceeds, right? Like,
Yeah.
how are you ever gonna win, right? Because like it's really, really hard to have that much edge. But people in like the meme coin space don't really give a fuck about like, okay, how much edge do I actually have? They're just like, I'm gonna gamble on this thing, and that's fine. Like, and that's kind of like where people kind of misunderstand what I'm saying, because I have no problem like people playing like a somewhat close to zero sum game on memes, and then just like the money goes back and forth and the better traders kind of rinse the worst traders. Like, I'm totally down with that. But if the majority of the money that is made goes to scammers, and the money that is lost comes from normal people, I think that's just fucked up. Like, that's just straight up fucked up. And I think there's no space in crypto where it's as bad as the meme coin space right now. And I mean, VC coins bad, I totally understand. But if you look at who's winning and who's losing there, I don't think it's like nearly as close to what we have in the trenches right now. I think that's some of the lowest percentages that you can even possibly have. And I've seen some theories about, and this is something that is like exists in traditional gambling as well. Basically, if you have too little winners in a gambling game, you just like the space just kind of like dies, like the game dies. No one wants to play it because you need to have a certain amount of winning that is happening. And I think that's kind of what's killed the meme space. This is where the last big drawdown comes from. It's basically because that number was hit. Like, there was way too little winners, and then it just kind of rolled over. I generally think, and I mean, this is something we talked about earlier, that a lot of these memes, like the bigger ones, can have a complacency shoulder. We're seeing like big bounces today on like Whiff and Pepe and whatever. But I'd be very, very careful with calling for much more than that. And the reason why, and I mean, we talked about it, people have complained that we talked about it so much, but it is the hottest sector in crypto, so I think it makes sense to talk about it. The reason why is because you have all these scammers just kind of leeching off of everyone else. And the moment these go up again, the scams increase again, and there's really nothing that you can do about it to stop them. And they will drain all the liquidity that comes back into the space, even if you have like a runner. People are professionals now. They know exactly how to fuck you over, and they will take full advantage of it because, I mean, at the end of the day, they just want to make money, right?
Almost tempting to make some sort of insane argument that you're more likely to find edge trading like BTC ETH Sol than you are something on Pump Fun, you know?
I mean, 100%.
Which is hilarious
right
because traditionally you'd argue the complete opposite. You're like, oh, well, look, all these fucking big traders and people with size constraints and the best tech, etc., are trading the most liquid, highest volume instruments. So to look for edge, I'm going to go trade in places where my size constraint is an edge in itself. Except the place you go to is just not it. You know, it's just bundled with insider laden, whatever. But Don, really, I think what's going on is that we missed it. We're coping. We are not good at fucking trenches. Could have made so much money on 10,000 different tokens, but we didn't because we're dumb and don't know what the fuck is going on. We don't understand why we're talking so long about the trenches. Post wallet, You don't know what you're talking about. Pussy, cope, seethe. I made
CA.
this much. Drop CA. I made this much on this coin. So clearly my exception to the rule proves that the rule isn't valid, like all that type of stuff. And look, I think there is like at least marginal validity to that critique. Like, I don't know about you, I've not spent much time at all in the trenches for reasons that I've outlined previously. I don't find it particularly interesting. I'm pretty time constrained, but really the main one, and this is going to sound like bullshit, but in my twisted mind it isn't. Like, my DMs to this day, probably fucking dozens of coin type offering solicitations per day, right? Or like at least a dozen. And many of these coins have been the type of coins where they'll DM me, I ignore them, and then I see them pop up on CT en masse, like in a week, And like, I think for some reason I still care about like reputationally acting somewhat correctly in this space, right? It's like for some reason, even though it's like the dumbest thing you can do. And I just think like the only thing that made sense was making a clear decision. Like, I'm either going to play the rigged game and take all these token deals and say, fuck it, just give me the money and max extract, everyone's doing it, open season on crime, YOLO, or I have to basically fucking ostracize myself from it and say, I can't play this game fairly, it's too insidery, and I don't want to touch it for like legal, moral, ethical, perceived, whatever, for whatever reason. I'm not going to touch it, and being the idiot that I am, fucking moron, right? I went for the latter. That's why I personally don't do much trench stuff. Maybe I should. If I was a USD extraction maxi, it'd be pretty easy. Like, especially with the following, we've seen this cycle more than any. People leverage the fucking shit out of that to make themselves rich, like without any
it's so
pretense.
easy, yeah.
It's so funny. We used to rag on people in 2017, 2018, 2019, whatever, fairly or not. They would like have a paid group, for example, or a course, or provide a service or something. We'd be like, you fucking scammer, making money from your followers by providing a service to people that follow you or whatever, right? Like, you were like the worst person on the planet. Whereas people are now straight up using their following for exit liquidity, or to make themselves directly rich on a token where they have like an entry at a fraction of what anyone else would get. And that's like fine, it's like it's just business to do this sort of promotion stuff. Anyway, another fucking meme coin tangent, but that's personally why I'm too busy as well, but that's generally why I don't dabble in that type of stuff. Like, I think you either just rip off the mask, so to speak, and say, fuck it, this is how crypto's done now, and there's too much for Zach to do, let's play. Or you kind of have to take a more measured approach and be a bit of a boomer and be comfortable with what you do. And I think, look, we've been around for a while. We've seen some pretty crazy prices on things, like BTC especially. Got to trade around 3-4K a couple times at the very least. And I think this market's been so fucking generous. If anything, it's a massive red flag to me when you see accounts from like 2017, 2018, even 2021. People that have been here for a while just start fucking turbo grifting after 5, 6, whatever years in crypto. It's like, bro, you've been here for a while. Do you really need this? It should serve as a bit of a red flag, I think, especially for longer term accounts that are getting a bit too comfortable with that side of things.
Oh yeah, I think just generally people are just like, everyone's getting their bag, let me get mine too.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And
there's only one Zach, but there are like 15 million coins made every day, like do the math.
I mean, Trump launched a meme coin. I mean, why should I not launch a meme coin?
Exactly.
Like, that kind of thinking, I think, is very prevalent, and I kind of get it.
When are we launching it? That's my only question.
Yeah, I think the meme coin thing is just like, I think the meme coin is mainstream, and I don't think, like, I kept, and there's something that we talked about a lot where I'm like, you want to look for the new things in the space, like, and then just explore it before anyone else does. I think the latest you can be to anything in crypto, it's meme coins right now. I think that's the space in crypto that is like the biggest kind of like, I mean, it's gone through so much and everyone kind of knows it. I don't necessarily think that's the way for new people to kind of go about anymore. I mean, I started with Dogecoin. That was like a meme coin back then, but it was basically one of the only ones. The market was really small. It was not like people were launching like 100 copycats every other day. I think like if you're looking for something new, it's probably not in the meme coin space. I think you want to look for like something like the NFTs that came up, something like the meme coin where it got industrialized, right?
You're
For
wrong,
better.
Don. It's meme coins on BSC now. Calling
Oh,
it now.
I actually like not BSC, but I actually think like also meme coins on other chains
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not where it's not professional
Not yet.
grifters,
Give it like
right?
2 weeks for the
Yeah. I
tools
mean,
to
that's
be
the
built
thing.
out. But
that's the problem, right? But I generally think what you want to do is basically you just dodge where the liquidity drain is, right? Like you don't
Right.
want to be in the space where like there's like just a bunch of scammers scamming everyone. And I think that's right now the meme coin space on Solana.
Yes. So you want to become the scammer on another chain. Be early to scamming.
If you want to be a scammer, I mean that's the way to go. But no, just also like if you want to trade something, just like when you see a lot of liquidity be drained out of something, I mean the money that sloshes around in that space gets less and less and less. And I think I don't think that's necessarily where you want to be.
Right. Thing is, even if you're an aspiring scammer, like you look at the landscape and you're like, wow, the Solana guys have really got it on lock. You know?
Oh yeah,
like,
I mean they're
very
professionals.
sophisticated. Yeah. I mean, it's the same as a centralized exchange trader. You look at like, oh, do I want to do this arb on Binance or on some fucking weird, you know, I don't know, geo arb, dodgy liquidity, might lock my account. KYC is non-existent, but you know there's a much bigger spread there. Like, where do you want to do business as a centralized exchange trader? Like the less competitive venue for those types of things. And I feel like if you're an aspiring scammer, which is like a full-time fucking, it's an industry in crypto. I think if you're an aspiring scammer, it's definitely, you know, you want to have a foothold in Solana, like you want to have like having an account on like the big venues. But if you're looking for edge and looking to start your business, you should be looking to scam on like newer chains where there are fewer sophisticated participants and the infrastructure isn't quite there yet, and you can have an edge in actually building out even primitive versions of what exists for Solana. What do you think of that?
This is what we've come to.
Like the principles of edge extraction don't change. I'm sorry, right? Like
no, but you are right. Like even as a trader, just generally,
yes.
like you just want to be where people are not professional, and the meme coin space is professional now.
Yeah.
And now you can just kind of argue, okay, what the fuck do I look for? And right now, I don't really have an answer. I don't really think much interesting has happened this
BSC,
cycle.
bro. You gotta start scamming on BSC. It's the only way.
Yeah, I don't know. Like CZ's already doing that.
You got to scam on BSC, bearer chain, Monad when it never launches. It's pretty hard to do on Hyperliquid, so probably not that. Yeah, that. What else is the market hyping? You got to be farming yaps, right? That's another thing.
Oh yeah. I actually signed up to that like 2 days ago because someone like threatened me. I was like,
"Oh, they threatened you."
Yeah, they were like, "You're gonna use my ref link, or I'm gonna kill you." And I was like,
I think I used your ref link to sign up. Like,
well, there we go.
This is how the pyramid scheme works. Yeah, it's so bad.
Yeah.
Also, we've done like people are gonna fucking loathe this show because it's just been the ETH chart for like the last hour.
Yeah, and
no
the ETH chart's
GA
not the best one to look at. It's actually up though.
Oh yeah.
Look at the 5-minute ETH BTC chart. That looks like a bullish trend.
I mean, we rescued it straight up.
But no, we should look at XRP
because your bag.
Because I have a bag.
So what the fuck is this daily? Can you explain what is this pattern called?
I mean, that's a Dalai Lama on the 4-hour.
Okay.
At least it's an attempted one. One thing that I want to say, right, is I mean, I've been chilling this breakout, whatever. It is at resistance now on both the USD pair and the Bitcoin pair. Which is basically, I mean, that prior range high. I don't know if you have that on the daily time frame, the high on the 2nd of December.
Yeah, got it.
And then if you go on the BTC pair, same kind of high, same day. So we're at resistance at both. If that breaks, I legit think this goes supersonic. Like you're gonna trade at $5, like pretty much immediately. But this is the best place to be bearish if you want to be bearish. I'm personally just gonna hold. I don't know. Like I just feel like if this cycle is going to continue, which it doesn't have to, right? Like top cycle thing, that top signs and whatever we talked about. It doesn't have to continue, but if it does continue, I think the crime is gonna intensify, and XRP is just like my bet on crime. So I'm just gonna stick with it. But I did think I'd chill some resistance like while we're there.
Shill some resistance is so funny. It's like, what are you shilling? It's like, oh, resistance level on XRP is the best I can do today, chief.
Yeah. So I mean, this is like one of the worst places to buy.
Okay.
But if it does break out, it's gonna look like a great place to buy.
What about Trump? Give me some Trump TA. Is there some fucking trend line I can draw, like on the 4 hour?
No.
Oh.
It's just literally just Wall Street cheat sheet. Then I think this is
Okay.
the way to the complacency shoulder. But I'm not sure. Like the Trump thing, Trump has a lot of influence on this thing, and the timing is quite tight on Trump because the unlocks are gonna come in. I think there's enough time for this to put in a complacency shoulder. In my opinion, if the market kind of has a couple good days to a couple good weeks, this could easily go back to like 40, maybe like 50 even.
Oof, easy 2x. Thanks for playing.
But I think the moment you get unlocks, this is going to be mercilessly dumped on your head. So generally, I think this is a bad bet. But short term, I'm not surprised it's bouncing. I think that is probably going to continue as long as the market stays somewhat up. And that's also a big question. Yeah, also a big, like, I think generally Trump is probably a good altcoin short term to trade.
Well, the thing is, there's like no narrative in the market right now, right? Like outside of some weird stuff. So if anything, in those, I don't know if you agree, but like in my view, when the market is narrative starved, more so than usual, people will just look at price and then create a fucking narrative after the fact, having seen the momentum. So like right now, if there's no dominant sector narrative, whatever, people are just going to say, oh, look at the outperformers, from the bottom, or, the fastest horse, or whatever fucking analogy you want. And then that kind of, momentum begets momentum and it turns into a narrative. So I literally think filtering watch list, unless you have like specific edges with catalysts around unlocks or whatever else, like filtering watch list by fucking percentage moves and then letting the threadles do the narrative work for you is not a bad way to, if you're going to ride be it a momentum wave or complacency shoulder wave, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't think it's a terrible spot to just be a price maxi, personally. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you're this narrative starved, I mean, having a president sitting, like, that's why I think, like, just having a meme coin, like a president that has a meme coin, like that can also just, I mean, that can just become the narrative, right? So like, but I hope people don't buy this shit. I'm actually not going to. Like, I was thinking about it. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days now. Like at $15-16, I actually liked it price wise, but I've decided just not to partake for the detriment of myself. I think it's gonna be like a decent trade, but I don't want to support this shit.
I mean, you've already supported Trump with like six figures of NFT purchases, and also, I guess morally, Trump coin is a step too far, but XRP meme coins are okay.
No, but the problem, and no, it's not. Like, there's not a big difference, if at all. The problem with the Trump coin is that if it goes up, you get more and more. Like, this is like you get more and more high profile kind of meme coin launches. You already saw this with Dave Portnoy, kind of like using this as as a justification why he's like pump and dumping on chain. Allegedly. I mean, he actually kind of called it that, or like somewhat called it that, but in
Minecraft.
In Minecraft, who knows at the end of the day. But basically, this is giving people, like, the better Trump does, the more justification it gives to scammers just scamming and grifters grifting. This is why I don't want to see it go up. I don't really think there's much of a difference, just coin-wise. It's a meme coin, just like any other meme coin. It's just, there's a couple downsides to this. One is that just the Trump team just holds all of it, like 80%, which is outrageous in comparison to a lot of other coins. Like, this is not normal. And then two, like I said, it's gonna kind of make the culture in crypto even worse if this goes up. The two reasons why I didn't do anything with it in the last couple of days, but I get it when people trade it. And it's not like I'm hating on people trading it. I mean, everyone's got to eat. I just personally decided not to.
I get it. So what I've gleaned from that is momentum long Trump with Popcat and anything else up double digits today.
I mean, the funny thing is, like, these are down so much that they're kind of mean reverting right now, and that's the argument that people are using. Like, look at the outperformer of Popcat, and then you kind of look at the top to the bottom where this where PopCat went. It went down 92%, and this is what we talked about.
Yeah,
like it's down 90.
We spoke
like,
about exactly this, what we're doing right now. Like something.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, 1-to-1. We've called our past selves have called out our future selves. It's quite funny.
Like this is down a shitload, and it's bouncing obviously the most because I mean, if you take something that's worth $100, it goes back to 1, and then complacency bounces back to 10. You're like, this is 10x, and then you just ignore the fact that it went from 100 to 1, and you're like, this is just 10x. This is the place to get rich, and I think that could lead to some funny reflexivity in that whole space. But at the end of the day, don't lose sight of the fact that the fact that it went down 95% should tell you about like how much this should be worth in the first place.
Sure.
Like there's not much behind these, but you will see the relative outperformance, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I do think like the profile, like I think in our defense, we covered this last time as well. Like there is a difference in kind of risk profile and someone who holds it the fucking entire way down and then is arguing for relative strength because of the bounce, and then a trader who just comes in having not held the 90% drawdown and says, this is moving and it's up percentage-wise, so I'm going to trade this. You know, like those people are in pretty different positions. But I don't know, like, yeah, I agree that the market is narrative starved. I think if there is going to be a narrative, the market will just kind of look at price and come up with a narrative after the fact, realistically. Like right now, it's still memes from my watch list at the very least. And then also people trying to farm points and stuff. Like I think most of the interesting stuff is like, I mean, meme coin mean reversion, but then I think BSC attempt kind of, you know, vampire attack on meme coins from Solana is at least worth monitoring and is quite interesting because there's fucking so much money in the Binance ecosystem. Thing is, they're really, you know, that side of the market is really fucking good at scamming too. Like they, you know, like BSC season was a fucking slaughter back in the day. Like that was rough. So it's pretty sophisticated there as well. If maybe we should write a book like Principles of Edge Extraction for Crypto Scamming or something, and you know, talk about different venues and playbooks or whatever else. I think we can do a pretty decent job.
I don't think the scammers need much more help.
That's that's true. But yeah, I think like Binance, biggest exchange in the world, they've run similar-ish. You know, they were early to meme coins essentially on BSC, like pre-Solana. And CZ is now doing the whole nice guy doesn't know what's happening act. Like, oh, like the community and which dog is the real one. This is so interesting. I'm learning so much. It's like, bro, come on. You are a fucking shark, you know? And I say that in like a half complimentary way. But him coming along is like your cool uncle who's like good faith, intellectually curious, but doesn't know what's going on and is trying to learn. Like that is not CZ. Do not become the number 1 fucking centralized exchange. With one of your biggest competitors being in jail by, you know, not knowing what's going on. So I still think BSC is interesting though, or at least, you know, if you're nimble and jumping around from chain to chain, place to place for these types of mercenary trades, I'd at least have some money on there to click around.
Yeah, I think they kind of screwed it up, honestly.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, the way they did that whole dog thing.
Oh, fuck that. That was so awful. Yeah, awful.
I think a lot of people just lost a lot of money, and it's basically like left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. It's basically like TRX tried. Do you remember like when TRX was like, oh yeah, now we're trading on TRX?
Oh my god, yeah.
And then everyone just kind of lost all their money and left again. I kind of feel like they might have like fucked it up. They could have done this quite well, and I think it could have been a nice rotation. I'm not entirely sure if it's still going to happen. It could, like you said, I think there's good reasons why. But I think that was just such a fucking dumb move by whoever. And it's not just CZ that's behind this. Obviously, he talks with people. I think whoever did this, just like, there was so much money extracted. Did you see that one, that guy that launched the fucking... like the broccoli coin.
He ran it back to back, bro. He's the fucking goat.
Yeah, he made like...
Send him to LA right now. He's overqualified.
I mean, he made a couple $100 million apparently. So yeah, there's so much money. And this is what we're talking about. Like, there's just some random scammer sitting somewhere. He's obviously not trying to like make a coin that sticks around. Like, he just tried to maximum value extract. And he takes like, there's like 10,000 people that try to play this game, and he just takes all their money. And I mean, you just know that this guy is just gonna, like, with that money, he's just gonna buy an apartment in New York City or whatever, and buy like supercars spend it on like whoever the fuck in clubs or whatever, and it's like a tiny portion might go back in crypto, and that's the stuff that is just very toxic to the space.
I mean, there's no more wealth multiplier, wealth effect kind of thing. I mean, there are cases, but they're pretty low. Like, I think the hyperliquid airdrop's like a good example. And there's some chads in our comments being like, this could be it, and it was. So kudos to them. But we've sort of spoken about this dynamic before, where if you want longevity, you need to make the people who are early rich, essentially, and incentivize, like, get them aligned with on an ecosystem level, and then they will go put more money into your ecosystem and gamble, so on and so forth. And that's like, growing the pie, essentially. But these other operations are just massively net extractive, as you mentioned, like even in USD terms and even in kind of ratio terms, where 20,000 people come in and like one guy makes all the money and then takes it all out of crypto. Like that's not how you get alt season,
Nope.
Whereas in the past, it was the literal opposite of that. It's like literally everyone is getting rich at the same time, more or less, almost everyone, and they want to keep doing it, and they just rotate infinitely.
Oh yeah, it was a hot ball of money. You remember?
Like money. Now it's like, I don't even know. I need to think of a prime analogy for this, but it's not that.
Like that's the difference between VCs and the scammers. Like literally, like the VCs, they make money, they put it in something else. That was the hot ball of money. Like literally, that's what the entire 2018, 2021 cycles have been basically, like the VCs grifting people out of money and then putting that money into other VC scams, and those putting the money true. Like that's literally the ICOs too in 2017, 2018. Like there were ICOs that invested in other ICOs that invested in other ICOs. Like it was a whole Ponzi.
Yeah, it's called fund of funds, actually.
Yeah. And then and what we have now is like, I mean, a scammer is not gonna put his money into another scam. Like this is not how it works, right? Like they're just gonna make another scam maybe, but what they're gonna do with their money is they're gonna take it out of the market. And this is why I'm like, the whole like VC versus meme coin thing is just like, I mean, yes, both are shit. But like the money with the VCs goes back in the market largely because they're just trying to kind of like hyperinflate their numbers, and then they make money if the fund basically goes to infinity, and they're just trying to run it up as hard as they can because they're making money regardless. Whereas other people that just tend to scam, they're just taking money out. Both are bad. One is worse than the other, in my opinion. But yeah, we should talk about like coins instead of the whole meme coin thing. People are going to be upset at us again.
No, it's actually a perfect time to end the episode, I think, because I mean, we might as well double down on the format, and it's just like philosophical bullshit. I don't know what other coins you want to talk about. I mean, Sol is still doing
no
things. That really hasn't moved. Dogecoin bounced.
Dogecoin,
kind of.
Doesn't look that bad. Low time frame looks quite bad. High time frame, yeah.
The thing is, it just like has this big wick, and you're like, let's fucking go, and then it doesn't make a new high. Like a lot of traders that, I mean, I've spoken to a few, but also just broadly seen on Twitter and stuff. The expectation was that the alt nuke would just V reverse, and it's a generational entry. And I think it's been like, a week now, more or less, and a few people are getting on the impatient side of that. And again, the same fucking dispersion is showing up. I mean, look at Litecoin, for goodness sake. What is that thing doing? Getting an ETF, apparently. Is that the coin you wanted to talk about? XRP, Litecoin?
No. I mean, those are actually the ones that look the best, yeah. But I generally think, like, with that V reversal that people expected, I actually expected, like, the whole Dalai Lama kind of pattern from the beginning, which is basically, like, you spike low, you bounce higher, and then you put in a consolidation to the side, and then you start just rallying back to where you came from. And if you look at the XRP chart, that's pretty much exactly what it's doing. So like, I'm not too, like, I think this is the most bullish thing it can do. It's just a question of, can it actually pull it off? Because there's still a little bit to go. But I mean, like, this is the most bullish pattern that we have in crypto, I think. Like the big wipeout into, like, you get a big wipeout into bounce that retraces a lot of it, which gets people bearish, and you go sideways, people are in despair, and then you start running it up. Like, that's the best you can get. The problem is, if that pattern fails, then, I mean, we're just fucked. So that's kind of where we are right now. But I like, just from that, even though it's at resistance, and this is what I talked earlier about, like, I just kind of like it, just because the potential is there to just kind of fully run it up. And if that runs it up, like, deep dip like this that you run up has a lot of like explosiveness to it, which I would like to see. We'll see if the market actually has enough money to pull it off, or if the scammers have scammed too much to kind of allow this.
But that's
I'm
what makes
in team-
BTC great, though, right? It's like it's not it's like an entirely different base of holders, buyers, and traders and
this
flows
cycle, yeah,
in general.
this
cycle,
100%,
yeah.
yeah.
So you know, in previous cycles, that's what also helped BTC in its role as a benchmark, because you know that even if it's not the same groups, they overlap pretty heavily around BTC. Whereas now it's like the fucking vaping side of Pump Fund is like has no overlap with the BTC side of crypto. So if you want like a concierge white glove, I live in the suburbs and my kids go to nice rated schools experience, like BTC gives it to you, and you don't have to deal with what goes on in the projects across the street from you. You know how some people just like completely fucking cordon off their lives, basically, and they build like a garden. And I don't know about Germany, but like in London, it's very strange how planning permissions and shit work. You have like a really posh neighborhood, and then because of zoning laws, essentially, you turn the corner and it's like a really not so nice place. And that leads to some friction from time to time, just because of how the city's designed and stuff. But like, at least crypto is giving you that option. Like, if you don't want anything to do with the super insidery whatever and trade more boomer style, like BTC is there. If you want to get into the trenches, you don't care about the boring, USD, JPY, fucking BTC headline stuff. You go into the trenches. I still think ultimately your fate will be decided by BTC, right? Like, I don't believe in super dispersion, uncorrelated market, whatever. But in terms of like your day to day, you can definitely do a fucking Build-A-Bear experience of what you want to trade, the type of people you want to see, who you want to interface with, so on and so forth.
But I think generally, like the end of the cycle might be where the boomers get into like.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I think when you get more ETFs, like we have ETH now, if you get Litecoin and if you get like XRP, if you get Solana, I think those are the most Dogecoin. Like Dogecoin. I think that's kind of like the list basically of the ones that you could get this cycle. And I think at that point you might actually see some funny stuff happening on the altcoin front. But I mean, it depends really how hard everyone scams, because if the space is so bad that people are just like, I mean, it's just obvious that everything's a scam, then you might not get this. So like, that's kind of what we're relying on, people not scamming so hard. I think that's a tall ask, because everyone's just like,
listen, bro, game is game. Okay, I don't hear you fucking complain again. Even though it does kind of fuck all of us from a cycle point of view and a returns point of view and reputationally, whatever else. Like, crime is legal.
I still have hope. I think
okay.
I think the boomers are gonna buy the top on those. On like Litecoin, ETH, and
you think the ETFs are a gateway drug to them becoming degenerate pieces of shit?
No, I think they're going to buy the ETFs, and those are going to go up because of it. And then people are going to be like, oh, shit, the ETF trade, and that's going to heat up at that point. And then that's just the peak on top of everything else. And the peak on top
everything bubble.
Oh, no, but like crypto altcoin-wise. I think like if you actually get significant flows for like ETH, Litecoin, XRP, Dogecoin, whatever, like these ETFs, I think you're going to get a massive kind of like drain on the rest of the altcoins, like everything that doesn't have an ETF, basically.
Oh yeah.
And I think that could make it really funny when people like crypto people actually rotate into the ETF coins, finally kind of give up on their coins, and then everything just leaves. I think that would kind of like be a nice ending to this cycle.
Such a fucking drama queen, Don, I swear to God.
That's kind of like what I hope / expect. I think it'd just be neat.
But the ETH ETF was a piece of shit. Do you think that's like an ETF issue or a ETH skill issue?
I think it's just not time yet. Like just cycle wise. I think basically like you make a bunch of money with like the boomers make a bunch of money.
Rotate from Nvidia to Litecoin.
No, they're not rotating from Nvidia to Litecoin, but they might rotate their Bitcoin ETF into like a ETH ETF or like a Litecoin ETF or whatever, because they don't really believe in it in the first place. And then if someone tells them, hey, Litecoin is just like $100 and Bitcoin is 100,000 or 150 or 200,000 at that point, I think you can make the argument that they might rotate some of it. And then if they make money with that, like with that rotation, which the cool thing is these will not just scam rug pull you.
They'll do it slowly.
They will do it slowly, not fast, exactly. Then you have that whole, because that's how it works, right? Like people buy, people make money, people buy 10 times the amount more than they bought in the first place.
Newton re-enters with a lot.
Exactly. And that's how these kind of things run, right? Like that's how cryptos work. And right now it's basically people buy, people lose all their money, people leave, right? Like that's not how you get people to stick around. This is how you make people leave. And I think that's kind of what's been happening. I think the ETF stuff might change it. But I might be too positive on that, and maybe they just fizzle out, and we all fizzle out, and it all goes to zero.
I mean, Wall Street dumps on us every time, you know. Obviously, proverbially, Wall Street.
The funny thing is, like every time, like CT always talks about dumping on retail at the when like everything goes up, and then retail never buys what CT talks about, right?
Yes.
Like we had that whole like, oh yeah, retail is gonna buy WIF. The moment the market heated up, WIF went to basically zero, just went sideways forever. And XRP went to infinity. And the retail people were all trading XRP, and the crypto people were sitting in WIF and just lost all their money, which I found really funny. And I think that's always going to be the end of it. Like the end result, like if that ETF trade materializes, I think a lot of people don't have exposure to that side of the market. And they might just rotate at the top, like they did with memes, like they did with anything else. The CT or generally Twitter just, like they don't dump on retail. They are retail. That's just how it is.
You and I included.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, this is fun. We had a lot of charting and useful TA.
People are gonna hate this.
Dozens of levels and squiggly lines to provide a ton of value. Any final notes, questions, comments, concerns, complaints?
No, I don't. I think we talked enough.
Also, I can't believe you sold all your BTC at 30K.
Like, oh yeah,
that's disgusting. That's my favorite part, by the way. As a fucking no glaze type of idiom in place, you were shilling me and all of social stuff XRP from like what 40 cents, 50 cents,
50
or something, 50 cents.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the best liquid trades of this entire cycle, right? And it's recent and it's still going up. And like, there's no mention of that ever. But, you know, God forbid you have a view around the ETF where you're like, hey, I'm starting a fucking family. I'm not going to be actively trading some de-risked or whatever, but I still think it goes up. It's like, oh, that I will hold over your head until you die, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like
it's glorious. I have that every day. People are like, oh, but you sold. I'm like, dude, you don't know. Like, I sold Bitcoin at like 4K before.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Like, I've sold Bitcoin like at 1K before, believe it or not. Like I've sold and bought so much. This is just kind of like, I mean, that's the trading game, right? Like you sell, you buy, you do a bunch of shit. If I held my Bitcoin, like I could flex on everyone, right? Like if I held my Bitcoin, the first time I bought Bitcoin was trading below $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Like I could flex with that on everyone. I'm like, hey, you guys, you bought like on like at 20K, dude. I bought at $400 or $500. But if I did that, like I bought with so little money because I was so poor back then, I'd still be poor right now, even though I bought like at like nothing, right? Like I started with $50. So people are like losing their minds when I sold or whatever, but like the trading thing kind of works for me. So I don't know why people take so much issue with it, but
yeah, I mean, I'll let you know when I tweet at you and make stuff up about your life trading positions, philosophical views, and whatever else I feel like, really. You've got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. I have a whole group of people now that professionally make shit up about me.
That's the real cabal.
Yeah, that's the.
I mean, I make passive income feeding them information, to be fair. So, you know, it's
win-lose.
As in, I win, you lose. All right, let's shut the fuck up, dude.
Yep.
Check out the links in the description. As we mentioned at the beginning, we'll have some more content around the Woo perp deck side soon, if that's of interest. Also, if it's of interest, let me know if I should bring back Monday markets in one form or another. Don suggested that maybe it's a 5-minute summary type of thing of everything that's happened in the last week or so. We could look at future stuff. I'm just kind of bored of charting, and I'm too busy with breakout stuff to do day-to-day trading. So it's kind of like, I'm a fucking idiot out of the loop. I'm not going to talk, but maybe that's way too British of me. So let me know what you want to see on that side. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.